All right. I think we're here. Everybody can hear me. Good morning day. It is not morning. It's been a while since I've done that. It's been a crazy morning though, at least up until this point. Um Good day and welcome to the stream. Sorry for the delay. My computer decided to have all sorts of problems. And wouldn't you know it, right at this moment, time to go live is when it happens. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a special thank you to our top sponsors. Among them is FPEA. And I have an announcement from them while we're here that I'll share. Um, there's a reminder to be sure and go ahead and register for your FPEA convention. Make sure to do that so that you can get the program in the mail. They have great keynote speakers, Guinea Urick from 1000 Hours Outside and Joel Salatin from The Lunatic Farmer. And if you want to pick a
The
date,
lunatic farmer?
yes, I've never heard of them, but apparently it's exciting. So they'll be guest speakers, and we're gonna hear from them at the convention. I think a lot of people are looking so forward to that, and we're looking forward to seeing a bunch of familiar faces and everything that comes along with it. So special thank you to our top sponsor, and without any further delay, we'll get right into it. Wrong screen again. There we are. I'm good at this, guys. I couldn't get us there. Well, good day, Crystal, Brenda. Um, where do you guys want to start today? I know it's been kind of like a whirlwind leading up to this point, and there's so many things we can jump into. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think everybody's thoughts right now are what's happening with the bill and the
Yeah,
legislation.
sounds
So
good.
while people are thinking of other questions to ask us, let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive into an update on the bill. Brenda, where is it currently?
It's sitting in appropriations in the Senate unless they put it on an agenda this morning. And I honestly have not had time to look at it. It has been nonstop for us this morning
Mm-hmm.
because we're still working on the bill. And what I tell people is things look like maybe they're over and there's no hope, but it's not over till the fat lady sings. And
Yeah,
that will be, that
I'm
will
not sure we
be,
can say that anymore, can we? I don't.
I don't
You
know.
you can say whatever you want.
Okay, well, that's kind of the old saying, but
I know.
it's going to be over March the 8th at midnight.
March 8th,
So
midnight.
we, your lobbyist, continue to try to find any
Mm-hmm.
crack we can
Yes.
and build any support we can for our position, which is
Mm-hmm.
to get rid of the language that says that equipment is only limited to the four core subjects. Sometimes in negotiations, we have to give some and take some. But
Mm-hmm.
our main thing is to get the equipment language out. Number two is to try to get digital devices in there, but that may come with some trade offs and some more complicated language. Won't be harmful, just not necessary in my opinion.
Right.
But we have to find a
A balance.
reasonable compromise that everybody
Mm-hmm.
can agree on. So
Yeah, and there was a period where it was just very difficult to get heard about anything. It was very difficult to get any kind of meetings. I mean, it still is kind of difficult, but we managed to have found at least a hook or a crack to fit ourselves in and to be heard. And we're definitely still working. I can't give too much more information than that, but it is definitely something that still seems promising. Um,
and Jason and I were working on language and compromise language this morning right up until
yeah, we've
it
been
was
working on it
time to
all weekend.
start this. So
Yeah.
that's that's the way it goes. It's like you got to be ready And when the instance comes, you just pretty much as a lobbyist have to drop everything to focus on what needs to be done at the moment. And you really need to be here, present. You can't say, oh, well, today I can't do it because I have a meeting with my co-op or I have a dental appointment. No, if you're going to be a lobbyist and you're going to be a good one, you have to be available when the legislature's in session. It's just, you schedule your dental appointments before or after and hope to goodness you don't have a tooth that is creating
Yeah.
pain in the meantime.
Yeah.
I used to have my cars all serviced before legislatures start because I don't
I'm
have
gonna
a
start doing
backup.
that.
So I take them all to have the oil changed or whatever has to
Hmm.
do before legislature starts. And I try to pay all my major bills and figure all that out before I get into session because you just don't have time to do personal things because
Right.
you need to be available.
I believe it or not, I made a friend when we moved up here, and
Is
that
that a
person.
surprise? You made a
It's a
friend?
surprise.
That's
It
not a
is.
surprise to me.
And they invited me to trivia night, and I remember that I was like, well, I don't know if I can tell them yes or no because I might have to just divert and leave and go to the Capitol. And while we were still trying to have conversations at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and
Right.
and leading up to like a 6 o'clock, I just don't know if I can have friends right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
it it's definitely unique.
People are saying, well, if we plan an event, when can you come? I say, I don't know. I don't know. You plan the event, go ahead. And if I'm available, I'll come. But,
Yeah.
you don't have personal time really
Mm-mm.
during
No, I
this.
don't.
The lobbying takes a
Everything.
priority to everything
Yeah.
else. If you're going to do a good job, now we could just say, oh, well, we'll work on that next year. But
Hmm.
sometimes next year's too late.
Yeah, and I feel like these things need to be fought for. Especially, everybody has been complaining that you take the shekels, you deserve the shackles, and there's that debate going on inside of our community, and I just feel like pushing those shackles back as far as I can for any of the people who are daring enough to jump in and pilot in any of those programs,
Right.
and it affects it affects all of them who educate at home or parents directing education. I don't want to mince words too much, but I was trying to talk to somebody the other day about kind of like my philosophy in what I'm trying to do or the vision of how we're trying to lobby forward. And I think a good way of saying it is that our goal is to reinforce and normalize as many options as we can that are not just traditional public school, so that home education, way over here on this end in its freest form, off the grid and everything, unschooling, whatever you want to call it, is protected and insulated by a multiplicity of options leading up to. And that keep that line of discussion about regulation or changes to the programs, keep that battle line all the way up as close as we can, and as far from home education as we can. And I think by embracing PEP and focusing on fighting back the restrictions or regulations that they try to impose helps us do that. It helps us keep that line much further up. And when we normalize and accept a multiplicity of options, it makes it that much harder to restrict back any particular one of them. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as we move forward. And I look forward to, man, it is a lot of work. And it is like all consuming and last minute moving and shuffling and conversations and rewriting language and getting points over here and gaining insights or research from over there and compiling it up. Um, but I actually kind of love it, to be honest with you.
It is
maybe
exciting.
maybe I'm a dork, but maybe I'm the dork that needed to do this. I just enjoy it. It's fascinating stuff. Um, Somebody says, "Oh, this person says you guys are doing a great job. Thank you." Deline says, "I'm so worried, but I'm still hopeful. I know you guys will do your best, and I'm praying." We appreciate that, Deline. You're in our conversations quite a bit because your unique circumstance has given us talking points to share and pain points to kind of help illustrate, problems that are proposed on one end, and we're like, well, think about this because this is not a maybe idea. This is a really happening idea and something, So you've been very helpful, to say the least. So thank you for being with us through all of this. Someone else, our sissy says, if you find the time, I'd love to know which fund pays for dual enrollment, um, and how that affects the step up scholarships. In our case, specifically UA scholarships. Do you want to take that one, Brenda, real quick?
I'll be happy to.
Okay.
About maybe 4 years ago, time
Mm-hmm.
passes so fast, it could be 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we had been fighting for um, students to be able to have dual enrollment free for private school students because they had not been given that option. Although when I was working on the part for dual enrollment back in 1996 for home education, we put in the language that they got it for free. So homeschoolers were not the issue, but there was this double dipping concept because public schools were, and maybe I shouldn't be telling all this history, but sometimes you have to know where it came from to understand what we got, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So public school students were the money for them was going to the public school. And yet they were sending their kids over to state colleges. No money was going to state colleges to pay for the courses. So there was this big battle about uh,
Mm.
state colleges were having to serve the kids, but they weren't getting any money. But the public school kids were double dipping, and so
Mm.
um, it took us several years. We had a couple of attempts at trying to solve it, and finally, Senator Stargell took that on as her issue, and they created in Statute 1009. I can't remember if it's 25. I'm thinking it's 25.
I think so.
0.25, that all students would get a dual enrollment scholarship, which is the way that works is the community colleges, state colleges would keep track of the students that were in the home education, the private schools, and the public schools. And anybody that was taking dual enrollment courses would then be reported to this Department of Education. And it would be a scholarship that would pay back to the state colleges the cost of tuition, books, and fees. And
Okay.
so UA kids are included. Because UA kids are included, PEP students are included as well because they get the same privileges and so forth. So the language in the PEP says that PEP students have to pay for classes at a public school, for a virtual school, post-secondary, but then there's an exception in there that says unless they qualify for the dual enrollment scholarship, which is in a different section of law, like I said. But but UA students have always been eligible for dual enrollment. It's just now there's a scholarship to cover it so that the money goes to the state college for those kids. And I'm not
And
sure, did I answer her question?
partly. One of the questions, or one of the other parts of the question, was the dual enrollment scholarship program. Where does that funding come from?
It's in the state budget.
The state.
It's just state money.
Yeah, it says the Department of Education shall administer the dual enrollment scholarship program. Is that so? That comes from the Department of Education's budget.
No, it's money that's allocated in the state budget, and I don't think that comes into the school budget, but it comes out of general revenue. It could be a line item in the budget. I don't remember.
Okay.
But it's
Fair enough.
general revenue money that's allocated for that purpose.
Ah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I interacted with this person just prior to the live stream. So I think her main concern was whether taking UA or PEP would somehow put free dual enrollment at risk. So I think you answered that question and covered that it's still protected for both UA students and for PEP because of the statutes.
Well, UA students are registered as homeschoolers in the school district, so they would be covered under the home education statute for dual enrollment.
If they're registered
Right.
as home
And that's the
education.
part in the PEP statutes where it references 1002.41 parens 3 through 8 as those flexibility and opportunities. The dual enrollment is in that section of the home education law. But because the PEP statutes references that, then it's also protected for PEP.
I noticed in 1009.30 for the dual enrollment scholarship program that 3A3 actually lists personalized education program secondary students as well. So the question, another follow-up question was to be clear, PEP nor UA need to pay the college.
Dual enrollment college.
Right. Dual enrollment college. Right. Okay. Makes sense. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in right now, so we can go back to our regularly scheduled programming. So the bill currently sits with the Senate and is referred to appropriations. We are still working on the language and trying. What happens next? Obviously, we haven't seen it hit the schedule. I was just trying to pull up actually while you were talking, the tracking for it.
I pulled it up and I didn't see any movement.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. So
What happens next? Well, it's only going to be anybody's best guess at this point until it actually happens. But I think that bill will sit, it's the House bill that's sitting in appropriations in the Senate. It came over in messages and then they referred it to a committee. I think because the senators had been challenged over our testimonies in the committee, the pre-K committee, a lot of them had concerns. And even though the big bill, there's more in the bill than this equipment language. It does away with the Hope Scholarship. It moves that money into the FTC programs so they can serve more students in the, in those programs. There's a bunch of other stuff in that bill, and it's, some of it is really good. They increase the number of UA students that can be served going forward. I think it was 1%. They've raised it to 3%. Do you remember the?
Yeah, it's whenever they hit within a threshold and the waiting list grows, they are allowed to hold a special session to increase up to 3%.
No, they don't have to have a special session.
Okay.
It's just an automatic increase every year. So if you didn't get in this year at 1% increase, then next year it's going to go to 3% if this bill passes. And so it's compared to the number of special needs students in the public school in the district that they can increase it up to 3% of that population. So it's an automatic. They don't have to have a special session to do it. They did this year because the waiting list was so long, and they couldn't, with the 1%, ever serve all those students that were trying to get a UA scholarship. So just to get over the waiting list as it was as of December 15th, that everybody could get in. Now, going forward, they're going to increase the number of scholarships by 3% rather than 1%. So, I mean, that's a really good thing. We don't want to hurt the scholarship, the kids that are on UA from getting it by asking the governor to veto the bill. That was one of our other strategies, is if we couldn't be heard on the equipment issue, then we would go to the governor and ask him if he would, speaking of which, don't we have a call with the governor's office at 12:30 or is it 1:30?
I believe it's 1:30. Let me double check.
I hate to miss that call while we're chatting about something else.
Sorry, Governor.
So we're pulling out all the stops. I just, I just want you to know that Jason and I are not sitting here twiddling our thumbs waiting for the bill to move. We're working. And
I can attest that they are not sitting twiddling their thumbs. I'll be witness to that.
Say that again.
I said, I can attest that they are not sitting twiddling their thumbs. I'll be the witness to that.
Even Saturday night, we're working on language, yes. Right? So, we're just trying to see, where is there any room that we can build support? Where's there any room that somebody with some authority can help us say, wait a minute, maybe we need to hear what they're saying. And so, but our strategy in trying to figure out how we could get them to listen was, if they don't make any changes in this language, then we could always go to the governor's office and ask them, with lots of calls and emails, to veto the bill. But that's really not the best strategy, because of what I was pointing out. There's some really good things that are in this bill, and vetoing the whole bill is not the best option. So if we can get some amendatory language, which is offered either in appropriations and then it goes to the floor, then they will take it up, and the floor is agreed upon language in the Senate, and send it back to the House, because now the House has to approve that language again. So the strategy would be, in my opinion, the House bill's already been over in messages. It's been referred. They would then decide to withdraw it from the committee after they put the language on it at the next meeting, hear it on the Senate floor with the new language, send it back to the House, and the House takes it up again in returning messages and votes to pass the bill, because now the Senate president and the speaker have agreed on that strategy. I think that would be the most efficient thing to do.
Yeah.
But
sorry, go ahead.
But anyway, so it will still be, if they don't get the language on an appropriation and it's agreed upon, they could put it in an amendment on the Senate floor. But really, to follow the rules, it needs to be heard in a committee. So I think they'll hear it in appropriations. At the end, the rules are there, but they can always waive the rules and do what they want to do. So there's no way to say this is what's going to happen. That's the most likely thing to happen.
So one of our followers, Grace, makes the comment that another aspect about this bill that's wonderful is what it does to address active duty military families. And I think that's not really something we've talked about on here, but it is true. It does address some of the issues that were occurring. The residency issues.
Definition of that, yeah.
And I agree that there are a lot of good things in this bill where we don't necessarily want it, but this language is a sweeping prohibition. So we're really, really concerned about that, especially as an effective measure. It shouldn't be being used as a stopgap measure for what they're trying to use it for. And we're trying to work with them to get the right kind of language that introduces effective limits and guides. There's also a very real lack of knowledge of what the purchasing guide says and does. That is, I mean, it's very difficult. This is one of the things that, not to take a tangent too far, but I've always been in favor of term limits because I'm like, yeah, that gives balance and a season change, keeps us on our toes. But one of the ideas that I was thinking of is term limits create challenges as well. So there's pros and cons in both ways. And one of the challenges that it creates is that the quick turnover that's needed makes it so that things have to, there's like a machine that has to run in the background. Something has to be consistent, among all the changes that are happening. And it makes it difficult to get in and get something done because you're not working with the same people anymore. And, the new ones come in and they're green. So there's just a lot that goes on behind the scenes that makes it challenging.
And the staff becomes the machine running in the background.
Mm-hmm.
They have more power than they used to have because you don't have seasoned legislators who have a historical knowledge. I've always been against term limits. I think we have term limits. Vote them out.
We do have term limits. I think we've had term limits for like 30 years almost.
No, not in Florida.
I thought I saw somewhere that it was 1997.
Well, is that 30 years ago?
30. No, that's not 30. That's
it was either
math.
I think it was the 1998 election because they also did away with the elected commissioner of education, which I think was really a bad thing too. Anytime you give up your voting rights, it's a bad thing. Don't give up your voting rights. But term limits, when it came out, I thought, oh my gosh, now we don't have people who have the historical knowledge. Jason and I sat with a senator who's been around since 1998.
Yeah.
And the man has seen every issue. He knows all the background. He knows why things are the way they are, and such wisdom he has. You can get a bad guy in there, but you also get rid of all of the good guys at the same time.
Right.
And to me, it's sad because there are too many issues for these legislators to really get a good handle on. They're spread all over all of these different committees.
This raises another good point. Oh, sorry.
And they can't know in detail all of these issues if you haven't been in those committees, you haven't seen it play out, you don't know whether something is a good idea or not good idea. Do we want to put it in statute or we don't want to work it out with the committee having, the opportunity to kind of get the agencies to work their issues. I mean, there are just all kinds of things that don't happen with term limits unless somebody does 8 years in the House and then they move over and run as Senate and get elected as a senator. Then they have 8 more years. So you can get a 16-year period, but campaigns are hard. And that brings up another point.
I thought are you about to say what I was going to say? Go ahead.
I think so. You go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Okay.
You
go ahead and then I'll tell you.
One of the reasons that homeschoolers had so much power in the legislature, and because we were getting such attention back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, was because we took our kids and we walked door to door for candidates. And we had input with those candidates. They got to see our kids. They believed in homeschooling after they met our kids. And then they owed us something. So when we came to the legislature and asked for something, they listened and they fought for us in the legislature. And we don't do that anymore because people have gotten so complacent with everything is going to work out. But you know why it's all working out is because Jason and I are in there fighting for you. And you may become weary. We're talking every week about what's going on in the legislature. You go, oh, I'm over that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then you get whatever they give you. And so, as you can see, it's not just a one and done issue. Every
Mm-mm.
committee has a different take on it,
Yep.
and we have to work every committee. So, whether
Mm-hmm.
you put in calls for one committee is not necessarily what you do for the next committee. So, when we put out a call to action, it's like Jason and I've done everything we can. We need
Mm-hmm.
pressure. And
Right.
your calls and letters are not important to anybody except your own legislator. And so
Right.
walking in those committees, walking in those campaigns, you make friends, you get cell phone numbers, you
Yep.
have a
Right.
face, and they honestly like, oh yeah, these people couldn't give us money. We can raise money. I've been told
Mm-hmm.
that. We can raise money, but we don't have volunteers. The people that can give money don't want to walk districts, but we bring to the table something they really can't buy, and that is
Mm-hmm.
loyal constituents.
That is
So
the exact point I was gonna make. So I'm so glad you did because you added a different historical perspective that came along with it. But you're absolutely right. Whenever the turnover is what it is and the term limits force that, one of the things that we can do to be relevant and to make sure that they remember our issues and remember us is that we're relevant while they're trying to land their seat. And as we help them do that, then we become relevant when we need something while they're in that seat. And that's powerful. It's really important. And I don't want that to be missed by anyone who's
because
who's
there are
watching or
elections
listening.
coming up in November, and these
Yes.
people who supported us need our support.
Yeah, I'd add one more thing too. Actually, uh, it's important whenever we have a need and we say, "Hey, it's time to send letters to your representatives and let them know X." I think that it's going to be equally important, and stay tuned for this because we're also going to call whenever things do go the way that we've been pressing and negotiating for them to go whenever the dam breaks or we get a little victory here or there, we're going to ask you to tell them thank you as well. I think that's critical. I think it's very, very important that we're not only just heard whenever we're like needing something, but that when they have championed a cause for us or they have met and listened and put it to paper, that we do come back and let them know that that matters to us. The testimonies are critical and they're very important, but so is that thank you. I think that follows it up. It lets them know that we found that place of unity that everyone was really kind of hoping for. They sacrifice a lot too. Um, there's a lot. I was listening to Senator Grohl speak at the FPEA Day this past week, and Senator Burgess as well. They both spoke, and there's personal sacrifice that they do make that goes into this, and we don't always see eye to eye on things, and we have to negotiate, or it's easy for them to ignore us. So that whenever you echo what it is that we're trying to be heard for, we're thankful for that. But we are HEF is thankful for that. The senators, they hear it when it hurts, and there's sometimes very little follow up on the other end to say thank you. So I think that's going to be important as well as we move forward. Grace says, "I'm hopeful," or sorry, I agree completely. I'm just hopeful that that can be fixed without throwing the whole thing out. I agree. And then she asked, "Has there been any positive feedback slash support about devices for PEP?" I will say that that is one of the things we're negotiating over and trying to address with the language that we're putting in. The challenge is still the same challenge that they're facing right now, which is put egg on their face, and why they're limiting it back to curb out, bad actors. I mean, people who are buying things that shouldn't really be
It's not
bought.
according to the law. It's not that they
Right.
shouldn't have them. It's
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
law doesn't allow them to have it.
Right. And so that's one of those things for devices, yes, for digital devices. Um, so while trying to push for more, they're pushing back on nada, back to the four core subjects, and so it's a bit of a conversation. I will say that there is still some positive opportunity that can be
There's
worked
some
out.
hope.
But it may be something that we end up taking the win for not getting everything eliminated back to the 4 core subjects this year, and we look to accomplish digital devices next year. We're trying to do it now, but it might be one of those one step at a time kind of things. So we're just
We also are
very
trying
careful.
to get, he was on here last week, Bill Maddox.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing. He operates James Madison Institute. He's what is he? The president, the CEO, the
He's the
executive
director of
director.
the Marshall
No,
Center.
it's the James Madison Institute. It was started by Stanley Marshall. That's where you're getting the Marshall from. It's the James
Well,
Madison.
no,
It's a
he's the
Florida
director
think tank.
of he's the director of the Stanley Marshall Center for Educational Options. Bill is.
Okay.
That's what I was
Well,
trying
he
to.
also represents the James Madison Institute. So
That's within the James Madison Institute, isn't it?
I don't know all that corporate setup.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a Florida think tank. They have a lot of prestige, and
Mm-hmm.
the legislators listen to him. And
Mm-hmm.
what we've been asking him to help us form is a think tank between now and next legislative session where we actually have time as stakeholders to sit down and think through all of the things that have been brought to our attention during this session. Like, if you do this in the scholarship, what are the consequences or the
Mm-hmm.
benefits, and how are you
Mm-hmm.
going to enforce them? And literally think through all of that instead of just throwing out some language and not even having a discussion about it. But
Right.
I would hope that we could have some meetings, not only with the PEP representatives, but with the micro schools and the hybrid schools and even the
Well, this language also
umbrella
hits private
schools.
schools.
Huh?
Yeah. This language is also in the bill for private schools as well.
Right, but those are
Yeah.
only eligible private schools, and I'm talking
Right.
about
Right.
the hybrid schools that are meeting 3 or 4 days a week, and they're actually schools, they're keeping attendance there, and the parents are doing some of the follow-up education at home, but it's on the curriculum that the school has given to the student over the years. It's like a school thing. It makes no sense that they don't get to participate in the scholarship programs unless they give up the enrollment in that school. But Florida Virtual School students can do Florida Virtual from home and never go to a school. It's inconsistent in the statutes. And even though we've brought these issues up over the years, until we come to the legislature with a plan and a revamp of all that stuff that they've just been doing piecemeal over
Right.
time, it really needs to be just like, and I've shown this book before, which we found another inaccuracy in, but this is a law book. Jason pointed out the first one, and we found another one this morning. But you can see how thick this book
Yeah,
is.
it's
It's
thick.
huge, and it weighs about 2, 3, 4 pounds.
I'm going to
I'm
use it
trying to
for
see how
exercise.
many pages okay, it's got 1,320 and 31 pages, and then there's all kinds of, no, that's teachers' bills are right. Okay. So 1,350 pages plus the appendixes and everything of school laws. That's not any other laws. That's just school laws. We
Right.
rewrote this whole thing in 2002, and I sat on a committee that we revamped it for 6 months, and then a bill came forward out of that then became this book. And
Mm-hmm.
so we need another revamping of the statutes related to all the scholarship programs, the private schools, and and figure out what it is we want, because the umbrella schools have been in that gray area for a lot of years. We've just kind
Mm-hmm.
of let them ride under the radar screen, but they can't take the PEP scholarship kids because they don't meet the eligible private school definition. Um,
Yeah.
so there are pros and cons on that as well. Do you want to give up your status as a private school to take the scholarship kids? Well, we need to have a
Mm-hmm.
discussion about that, and we need
Mm-hmm.
to figure out how we can make it possible for the kids who want this kind of program to be able to get it. As we were talking this morning, one of the points that came up is there are a lot of kids asking for not the PEP, the FESEO and the FTCEO, which are scholarships for kids to go to private schools. But what was the number? Like 350 kids didn't have a place to take their scholarship because there weren't enough private schools.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do about that? Are we
Mm-hmm.
going to just say, oh, sorry, you can't have it. It's an unlimited scholarship, but you don't have a private school?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you want the PEP scholarship. Well, maybe those parents can't or don't want to direct the education of their children, but they might put
Mm-hmm.
them in an umbrella school, or they might put them in a what they call it, hybrid school,
Mm-hmm.
or a micro school, but those aren't legal.
They're not listed. Right. So, so those are some of the challenges that we're looking at. And Michelle, you're absolutely right of what you just said. I'll let people read that. I won't say it out loud, but you're 100% right. That's a huge part of the conversation, as well as to, you know, the motivations that we're up against. We are out of time. It's 12:57, and we have another call that we have to hop on at 1, to talk more about the same stuff and build relationships and keep the ball rolling forward. So I just want to tell all of the people who are on our podcast today listening live, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And, you know, we are still fundraising. Uh, I know that I say this almost every single podcast. I feel like I need to. There is a lot of work. There's a lot we would like to do, as well. That's future looking, not just what we're doing in this current moment. And to do that, we need the right kind of team members and things like that. And to right now, we're trying to raise enough funds to be whole and maintain. And then as we continue, we would also like to reach a point where, you know, we can invite other team members and build, because there's a lot more we'd like to accomplish. And so I would say that if you know people in your co-ops or your church groups or your friend groups or your online groups that haven't yet supported HEF and the work that we're doing, we make it very simple. Even, you know, if your family is tight, do not feel compelled. You know, that's one of the things that a friend of mine that I met up here recently was like, you know what we're thinking about doing with our kids is letting them know what you do and how you do it, and let them put money aside, and then each month, you know, we're gonna donate at this tier or at that tier as a family, and so we'll make it a thing to do. And I appreciate that. And you know what, if your family is struggling, if things are tight, do not feel compelled to. We're going to continue doing the work regardless, but it is something that we are still trying to flesh out the funds that we need. So if you know someone who can and is willing, we make it very comfortable to do one of the monthly tiers. Help share the podcast, share the information that we're doing, and share the support page on our website so that people can dive in at whatever place they feel they can.
And
And I just want to
we welcome donations from grandparents.
Yeah, that's true too. That's very true. And businesses have a whole package with a support tier. If you're a business and you want visibility, then there are ways to get that as well. So, thank you all for being with us. And a lot of you are just loyal. You're here all the time, you know. And I know that some people listen afterwards. So if that's you and this is later in the day or later in the week when you hear this, we're thankful that you watch too and that you listen too. Even if you're not able to be here live with us, it's okay. It all helps the algorithm. It helps kind of get us out there, so that a lot of people can know. One of the things that broke my heart early on and drew me into working with Brenda is that, we have a daughter of 13 years, and I didn't know as much as I needed to know about Brenda, and it bothered me. And I was like, we have to do a better job getting the message out. So help us do that. Help us share things, and we're here for you. But we do have to go. Brenda, is there anything else before we end?
No, we'll pick up next week.
You got it. All right. We'll see y'all next week.